Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to another episode of a Woman of Leisure podcast. My name is Tempe. For those of you who do not know me, I am a native of New York City, currently living in the south of France. At 47, I went back to university where I subsequently enrolled in the study abroad program and relocated to southern France to study French, business, and art. I met the man who would become my husband and my first marriage just as I turned 50. Okay, 3 months. I met him just 3 months after declaring myself forever single. So, with that change, I am now in full blown menopause, and having taken the leap and done the reinvention work, I've realized that I'm now in a space of refinement. And with these hot flashes come they're like flashbacks. They're like hot flashes and flashbacks. So today I wanted to talk about a memory I had about transitional relationships. Okay? Transitional relationships could be 1 year, could be 3 months, could be 30 years, who knows. So, I want to take you back to, I think it was 2004. Okay. I was in, as I've described before, prior to my husband, I've only had two serious adult relationships in my single life. And this was one of them. Okay. I was dating a man who was significantly older. Not all of my relationships were that way, but this particular relationship was. And he was very instrumental in helping me really clarify, crystallize my goals for myself, where I saw myself. Now, at the time, I was an athletic trainer. I was auditioning as a professional dancer, but I also realized that that time in my life was coming to a close. Okay, so he was really getting me to crystallize and think about what it is I wanted to do next. So he helped me identify these things, and not only helped me identify them, but facilitated the certifications and the credentials that I needed to get where I wanted to go. So the first one was he helped me get an advanced yoga teaching certification. That's one. Paid for it, everything. Also, we talked about my possibly going back to school, so I started the reorientation process at the local community college. I didn't pursue it at that time. I didn't continue with it afterwards, but that's neither here nor there. I started the process with some reorientation classes, developmental classes. Then I also trained for two bodybuilding competitions, and I was fortunate enough to win one national title. And as you might imagine, the requirements, the things required of me, just with the bodybuilding alone, the training, the diet, everywhere I went, I had to make sure I carried my own food. So I had this huge, well, not huge, but I had a relatively jumbo size portable lunchbox that I would carry with me. It was summertime during the height, like during the last few weeks, and I always had to make sure that I had my own food on me because I could not eat anything I did not prepare myself. The diet is that stringent, even down to drinking distilled water versus spring water, things of that nature, supplements, downing so many supplements, fruit. And whenever I would get together with my friends, I always brought my own food, okay? Now, because I brought my own food, we would usually get together in the park or something, do like a little picnic. And at the time, as you might imagine, I was losing a lot of weight, okay? I was losing a lot of weight, and people were starting to, raise their eyebrows, like, you're looking awfully thin and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. But case in point, when they saw me on that stage with lights on, and you've got your cooking spray sprayed all over your body, and you're wearing a bathing suit with that takes 18 different measurements in order to get, and you're the just even the width Remember, these judges are looking at you from the bottom up. So think of that. You've got lights on you. You're oiled down with cooking spray. You're like I said, you're wearing these bathing suits that look like they could snap if you sneeze incorrectly. Even my nails, I usually don't wear artificial nails. Had to wear artificial nails because of the pose downs and things or whatnot. And it was interesting because when my friends who did see me on stage actually saw it live, they said, "Oh, now I understand." But as you might imagine, these girlfriends had no relationship to athleticism or fitness or whatnot, but they were my friends. So I would carry my food around, cut up my chicken or whatever. Now, mind you, I'm hanging on by a thread just to get through these next few weeks. So all the while, at the same time, bringing my food to these developmental classes, to bringing my food to these trainings. Meanwhile, I started actually teaching yoga classes professionally. Okay, so there was a lot going on in my life, but it was all worth it in the end. So as I mentioned, my boyfriend at the time encouraged me, facilitated a lot of these things, paid for my trainer, paid for my certifications, anything I needed to get, anything I needed to see this through. And my yoga teaching, actually, that certification is was the foundation of my income for like 12 years to come, basically up until the time I left New York. So again, this conversation, fast forward about 2, maybe 3 years later, I'm having a conversation. I've broken up with the guy, and it was a very, very tough breakup for me. At the same time, I was supporting him through his career and his family life. He was a single father. Widower, corporate lawyer, whatnot. So there was a lot going on. We traveled together, did all the couples things. So a few years after our breakup, like I said, it was a very tough breakup for me. I was having a conversation with one friend in particular, whom, like I said, she saw me losing all this weight. Now, she did not see me on stage, so that's a little bit of context there. And so when we were talking, she said to me, "Oh, you sound like you're on a really good path." And I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't I be? And she says to me, "Well, when you were dating so and so, you really weren't taking care of yourself." Excuse me? Excuse me? When I ran down the list of accomplishments that I accomplished in that one year, I realized in that moment, like I said, it was a painful breakup. I realized in that moment, wow, I probably accomplished more in that one year than I had my whole adult life up to that point. And that's when I realized, oh, this was a transitional relationship. This was not meant to go the distance for my boyfriend at the time. Well, my ex-boyfriend at that time. And then I turned to her, and this was all over the phone. I turned my attention to her, and I list down everything, and she quickly says, "Oh, well, then I'm wrong." And I said, wait a second. You were aware of everything that was happening at the time. You were excited about the idea of my going back to school. You were asking me if I was excited. So I don't understand. You're acting as if you've never heard this before, or as if this is news to you. She says, "Oh, it just seemed like when you were with him, you're anxious all the time." Yes, I was anxious because I had a lot going on, and I did not want to disappoint myself or anybody else. That's why. Okay, because I was actually doing things, not only things that I cared about, but things that I had on my bucket list for years. Okay, we hung up the phone, and I didn't realize it, but that was the beginning of the end of our quote unquote friendship. I started to think to myself, wait a second, if that's what she saw, why were we ever friends to begin with? And I remembered we lived in the same building. And then I started to think, what else do we have in common aside from that? We lived in the same building. We ran into each other a lot. We lived in the same building. And when you become familiar with somebody and you need some help, they call you, you call them, and it becomes a give But aside from that, what did we have in common? So again, I realized, okay, got it. Now, fast forward, maybe about another year later, I'm running around. Again, I was navigating so many different contracts at the time. I was fortunate enough to have about 5 working contracts teaching yoga in many different places, from corporate fitness clubs to preschool to franchise fitness clubs. So I was very busy. And she called me one day. And again, this was about a year, maybe 2 years after that conversation, that I realized we didn't have much in common. She calls me. And I said, okay, I was thinking, oh, I'll get back to her when I can. When I got back to her later on that day, she was in tears, told me she had been crying for like 2 days straight. And it's important to note that she had a history with depression. And I've seen bouts of it, but nothing that I wasn't directly involved. Okay. So she called me up. She was having this episode, whatever. Now, keep in mind, she did not live in New York City at that time. She lived in upstate New York. And if you know anything about New York City is very, very small. Okay. Upstate New York, the state of New York is huge, but New York City is a very small part of it. So when I say upstate, that could mean she could be 3 4 hours away. So it was a good 4 hours away. And again, I'm running around taking care of what I have to do. I'm hustling. So she calls me and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do because she is so far away. But then I was fortunate to remember a client I had who not only had history with depression, but she worked at a mental hospital. So I called her up, and I was so self-conscious about it, simply because of the fact that I like to respect people's time. And I called her in the middle of the day, interrupting her day, asking her to help me help someone else. Okay, I wasn't even calling for myself. So I called her, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So she called me right back. She called me back within like 15 minutes or something, and very eager to help. And she gave me some very, very, very helpful hints, which I'll get into right now. She said, okay. So I said, what do I do? I don't even know her exact location to send an ambulance or something like that. And she said, okay, you're going to call her. You're going to talk her through. You're going to ask her, how do you feel? Can you stand up? How do you feel? Do you have access to public transportation? See, that was another thing. Where she was located, I wasn't even sure she had access to public transportation, or at least public transportation she could get to. But she did drive. And so she says to me, well, ask her, can you stand? Can you this? Can you that? She said, yes. I followed her instructions to the T. So I got back on the phone with her and I used her strategy. I said, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Can you stand? She said, yeah, I'm totally ambulatory, blah, blah, blah. Now she sounded a lot clearer now. She wasn't crying as much, so on and so forth. She wasn't really crying much at all at this point. So I said to her, can you get yourself to the hospital? She says to me, yes. I said, how far is the hospital? And again, these were all questions that I was being fed through from my client slash friend. I said to her, can you get to the hospital? She said, yes. So I asked her, okay, get in the car, call me when you get to the hospital. She did. She called me about 15, 20 minutes later. Called me about 15, 20 minutes later. And as directed, I asked her, okay, what do you see now? And I just had her talk me through her scenery, her setting, what was going on. And I was directed to stay on the phone with her until she had to hang up, which I did. So, about a week later, this friend calls me up. We're chit-chatting. I said, how are you doing? She said, I'm good, I'm fine. So I said, okay, what happened? What happened to lead to that? She snaps and says, I don't want to talk about it. I said, too bad. I stopped my day. I stopped her day. We have known each other for 15 years at this point. And if I can't ask the hard questions, what kind of friendship is this? And I also, in my head, thought back to the time she referred to my relationship as toxic, unhealthy, because I wasn't taking care of myself. By her opinion, coming off the most productive, positive time in my life. And she felt comfortable with saying that. But I can't say the hard things. So I say that to say, during your transition, during your refinement stage, whatever it is, things will shift during flight. My favorite part of travel is going down the runway just before you're about to take off. I'm sure I'm not the only person. I love that rush. And as the captain is famous as saying, your baggage may have shifted during flight. Not everyone can take that journey with you. I have not spoken to this friend since. She essentially cut me off because what I said to her was inappropriate. And I said, you know what? No, no, not only that, I realized I had outgrown it. Was my approach a little tough? Yes. But after 15 years, and after what you brought me into, and I helped you to, we really don't have much else to say to each other. So I just wanted to say that, again, when I thought back to our relationship, the only thing we had in common was that we lived in the same building. So I just wanted to come on and explain that not everything or not everyone is meant to take the journey with you. Doesn't mean they're weighing you down, doesn't mean they're toxic. It just means that people's lives and trajectories aren't always going in the same direction. And I hope that that won't scare you, because I can guarantee you, in whatever change you make, you are going to lose people. You're going to lose people. Either your relationship is going to shift simply because people have children, or people's children are growing up. People have to relocate for work. Everyone's lives are different. Our lives take different courses, and that's okay. But there are just some things and some people who are not meant to take this ride with you. But the fun thing is, you might be surprised who does stick around for that transition, or who is going in the same direction. You'd be surprised. The people in your corner aren't always, or not necessarily, the people you thought they would be. Okay? Case in point, I came over here. I knew one person from my time in Nice, but Nice is about over an hour away. On our second wedding, when we had the wedding where we invited more people, I was blown away at the community that I had fostered here on my own, completely new. Actually, a number of expats, people I met at the university. Actually, the student, I think it was the student life director at my university, he sang Ave Maria for us. My good friend, she's also a fellow expat, and others who came out to help us celebrate, and all told us this is the best time I've had in 10 years. So I say that to say, don't be afraid, because you will either build a new community, or you might be pleasantly surprised who is there for you when you least expect it. Till next time, take care of yourself. I'm Tembi. Atutalea.